Welcome to the Walkout Network. This is Unleashed, the weekly panel discussion show. I'm your host, Ant Walker, and I'm joined by a fantastic panel, some familiar faces here. So we'll introduce the guest for the day, who doesn't really feel like a guest on the Walkout Network. We do a lot of work together. I jump on his channel all the time. He jumps on mine, and you'll see us collaborating on SureDog.com. He is the host and founder of Mixed Combat Radio, Mr. Matt, the hipster hunter. Matt, what's going on, my man?
How's everyone doing? Obviously, if you're watching this right now, hit the like button, share the video, all that fun stuff, subscribe, all that fun and necessary stuff on YouTube. But it should be a fun show. We have, obviously, UFC Tampa that just happened, some Ali Abdelaziz news by way of Bylock MMA and good friend of the show, Michael Fidel. We have a lot of stories to get to in the MMA world, so it should be a fun show. And plus, anytime I'm here with you three gentlemen, it's a fun time.
Oh, what an honor. What an honor. And let's pay tribute to Mr. Hunter's beard as it's growing back. That's what's up, man. I'm proud of you. Now we're going to go to a gentleman who has a full beard that I very much respect. He is the senior editor of SureDog.com. He goes by the name of Mr. Ben Duffy, the jack of all trades who's master of them all. Ben, what's going on?
Hey, it's a good day to be here with y'all, and with all apologies to the half of the panel that resides in the LA area. That there's only one thing going on right now. Time to get it back.
Well, me being a DC guy, I should be wearing a Nats cap because they did just eliminate the Dodgers last week. But I don't watch baseball, so all right. Now we're going to introduce the man with the math. He is the resident expert in statistics and all things legal. He is Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on, brother?
Well, first of all, I'd like to pour one out to the Braves. You know, we had a good run, and then we got destroyed 13-1, so that's the end of that run. But, you know, having a good time. Had quite a wild weekend if you were following the fight game. We're going to have a lot to talk about there. So my stat of the week that you guys, I'm sure, are looking forward to is 75. So at Rizin 19, both Roberto Souza and his big brother Marcos Yoshio Souza both competed at this event. Not against each other, obviously. Both of them lost by knockout at exactly 75 seconds into the first round. So there it is.
Well, that is the unlucky number of the family. So
that's a depressing statistic.
That is, wow, what a somber note to start things off today. Thank you, Mr. Petrie, for such uplifting content. Now let's go on and get to the bulk of the show, because as Matt alluded to, we do have a lot of things to talk about, a whole lot of fights. And I know, Jay, I know you were extraordinarily busy keeping up with all the play-by-play and all the fight facts and all your separate duties for SureDog. So let's jump right into it, gentlemen. Swing or miss, Joanna Jedrzejczyk will receive the next title shot at women's strawweight. Ben, I'll start with you.
Swing if she wants it. I mean, I don't know if y'all saw the pictures that she released, you know, the night of the fight or Sunday morning. Her foot is toast. Like, her foot looked like a Looney Tunes cartoon that got smashed with a hammer. Like, it was it was purple, and it was like practically pulsating in the still photos. I mean, the rumor is that the UFC that nobody wants a piece of Zhang right now. But if Joanna wants it, she's got it. The UFC has invested a lot of time and effort into kind of building her name. If they can get her back into a title fight, I think she'll be fast-tracked to it.
All right. I also agree, swing. However, it does depend on the timetable. I do believe Suarez has a little bit of a timetable that doesn't really match up with Zhang right now. On top of it, Jedrzejczyk doesn't seem to have a timetable that matches up with Zhang right now. So it seems like there's no clear-cut person that could fight her in the next 3 months, which is probably when they're looking at her to fight. So if she just is willing to, the champion willing to sort of wait for Jedrzejczyk, then that's probably going to happen first half of next year. And in all intents and purposes, it's the biggest fight in the division to make, since Thug Rose is not really caring about fighting at this point in time, let's be honest. And Paige Van Zandt is not going to be a contender at any point in time as well. So the biggest name you can really put in there, Zhang, is Joanna Jedrzejczyk, and she clearly just beat Michelle Waterson, who was on a little bit of a win streak herself. So why not make that fight next? The only other person would be Tatiana Suarez, and again, her timetable is a little bit off as well to make that fight before Jedrzejczyk. The only other name that could also swing in here is maybe a Andrade rematch, again, if Zhang wants to bounce back in the next 3 months and no one else can fight her.
Yeah, I mean, Andrade was linked to a potential replacement fight with Michelle Waterson at UFC 244. So sounds like she is looking to get in the cage sooner rather than later. But I don't think too many people are clamoring to see a rematch between those two, considering how decisive the fight was just some weeks ago. So Jay, do you agree with Matt? Do you think that Joanna versus Weili Zhang is the top draw for that division right now?
Yeah, we're a bunch of swingers tonight, I guess. I am all in favor. I feel like because of what's been happening in the division, just break it down one by one. It's the obvious last fight. It's the only one there is right now. I mean, Hunter did a good job of this. Go down the list. Andrade just lost to her pretty devastatingly and crushingly. We think she's coming back in November, but it's already October. So what's the deal there? She needs somebody, right? So I don't know what's that.
What if Macy Barber destroys Jillian Robertson this weekend?
She's a flyweight though.
Oh,
they're up at flyweight.
Thank you. Sorry.
So then the rest of the division, we got Suarez. She hurt her neck again. She's rehabbing, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but Suarez already said if Joanna wants the shot, it's all hers. Go ahead. I've got my stuff to deal with. So that's a bigger thing. The rightful number one contender says no, it's all good. I got to take care of my stuff. Then okay. Rose's MIA. Last I heard, I don't know if we're going to see her fight again ever. Ansaroff's luckily and happily and whatever you want to call it, taking some time away from the sport, so she's out. Then who's next? Who's next in the division? Joanna, she's there. Gedelia's alternated wins and losses. Waterson, Esparza, Rodriguez, Calvillo. There's just nobody else. It's one of those situations where they have the story. They have the former champion want to get their old belt back. Oh, I'm the queen. I am the queen that is the queen, or whatever she said.
I'm the boogie woman.
So she wants to be the queen again. So okay, that's. I don't always like it when fighters win one fight and get a shot, but the way this division's playing out, what else is there? I mean, there's not.
Yeah, and if anybody is going to get a shot off of a singular win, you think it'd be the former champion who defended their belt. What was it, 4 or 5 times?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that sounds like a logical thing. And then on top of that, just for pure name value, that's probably the best name that division still has to offer, considering the resume that she stacked up in her run as champion. So, all right, let's move on to another aspect of UFC Tampa. And that was the appearances of 2 very, very well-respected Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, one being Kron Gracie, the other being Mackenzie Dern. Both lost pretty clear-cut decisions there. So, gentlemen, do you think we're witnessing the ceiling of Gracie and or Dern? I'll start with you, Matt.
I think it's obviously it depends, but I think largely it's 2 different answers for them. I think Kron is probably yes. Dern is probably no. We have not seen the ceiling for Dern. I chalk that up largely due to the 9-month pregnancy and the 4-month really training camp and recovery of the pregnancy of a 13-month sabbatical from the sport. She wasn't developing as a fighter normally does, naturally does. So therefore, I'm not going to chalk up this loss as a huge red flag. Kron Gracie has been with the Diaz brothers for a very long time, has been training with them for a very long time, has been developing, in theory, for quite some time. He's the one that wanted this huge step up. He chose it. And to me, it was clear he did not belong at this level of competition. And I think looking at maybe his age, looking at, again, I made this point with you on the Walk of Shame after the card, that the Diaz camp is not made to build strikers. It isn't. If you look at everyone else within that camp, no one else has been able to become a good striker or a good boxer within that camp. Maybe Gilbert Melendez, but he was already kind of a decent boxer. No one else that has gone there to work with them has become anything better. And I think Kron Gracie has hit his ceiling, and unless he really wants to change that, he needs to shift trainers. He needs to go to maybe Firas Zahabi, maybe go to Mark Henry, There are some other names I would pick for him to go and train with that would actually maybe change that ceiling. But right now, with where he's at, this is the sort of product we have with Kron Gracie.
I do kind of like the suggestion of other camps for Kron to maybe visit. I was thinking King's MMA, seeing what Rafael Cordeiro was able to do with, and forgive me for messing up his name, the kickboxer who just debuted in the UFC a couple weeks back, Gigi or...
Oh, Chikaze.
Giga. Chikaze. Yeah. So to see what he was able to do with a gentleman like that, to have someone who specializes in one thing but was able to do just enough in other realms to pull out a victory. That seems like a good place for Kron to end up now. Ben, Jay, please tell me if I'm crazy on this one, but I thought that the performances of Kron Gracie and Mackenzie Dern were a very plain reminder that this is in fact mixed martial arts, and you need to have a complete game. So I saw two jiu-jitsu players without very much else to offer. What was your assessment of those two fights?
I think that this was, sorry, Duffy, this was, I immediately had in my head Damian Maia. I thought of the situation that he encountered. Now, granted, he had a 3-fight stretch against Usman, Covington, and Woodley. Tremendous wrestlers, top of the division. Went 0 for 49 on takedown attempts in that span. I saw two incredibly talented grapplers that couldn't get the fight to the grappling. They couldn't implement their game plans, and they didn't have the striking to get there. They didn't have the means to an end. They didn't have the takedown or the body or whatever they tried to do, the traps they tried to set, pulling guard as it happened multiple times. Neither of them could get it there, and that was very telling. That was one of those. You hear like I started training in MMA versus I trained in karate or stand up or BJJ to begin with. It seems like that next generation of talent running into these new fighters saying, I can still make it as a singularly focused grappler. I can go far in the UFC, and two undefeated fighters early in their careers got shut down. Now, Amanda Ribas has her own situation. But she's inexperienced too, but she's a black belt in judo and BJJ as well. Shut down Dern. Cub Swanson, who has kind of a trick neck. He kind of gets unfortunately for Cub, he has lost a lot of fights by submission. Said, no, we're not playing this game. I don't care what happens. Get away from me. And he could do it. And he was able to do it. Neither Dern nor Gracie had the striking to get there. And there were some very obvious deficiencies that need to be shored up. Now, thinking about what you guys had mentioned about switching camps for Kron, after all that went down with Cub trying to find training partners and camp loyalty and stuff, there's no way he's leaving the Diaz brothers. It's never going to happen, which means his ceiling might very well be here. He can take down the Alex Caceres of the world, but then once you bump into a Shane Burgos, he'll be like, no, back off. What do you do? So they're stuck, and I don't know if training striking for 8 months or 12 months or 16 months will get them to the level of somebody who's striking for 16 years. So I don't know. What do you think, Duffy?
I'm not sure I learned too much about either of these fighters in these fights. For the record, I picked Kron Gracie to lose this fight, and not even taking a flyer. It's in a rare moment of insight, I saw it clearly. Here is a 5-0 fighter there is nothing he's faced that has prepared him for Cub Swanson. Who lapses in strategy and fight IQ aside, is an exceedingly well-rounded mixed martial artist who is still a fantastic athlete at 34 or whatever he is, and has a ton of experience. He's a 40-fight veteran. So, I expected him to make Kron kind of look silly, and he kind of did. Kron didn't have much for him, but I didn't learn anything about Kron there. What happened was what I expected to happen. His ceiling is still self-determined. He's 31. He doesn't have a lot of wear and tear in terms of getting punched in the head. If he doesn't want this to be his ceiling, it doesn't have to be. Likewise, for Mackenzie Dern, Either way, Amanda Hebus was going to be the biggest challenge of her career. And I picked Dern to win the fight, figuring she'll get a moment to get her hands on her, get her on the floor, and run game on her down there. It didn't end up panning out that way, but I would have felt the same way about this fight if it took place 18 months ago. You know, if this fight had happened before she got pregnant, I would have said, you know, Amanda Hebus is the biggest challenge of her career. And while I slightly favor her, there is a good chance she is just a sitting duck on the feet. And that's exactly what she was. My question with her is, having just had a baby, having taken a decisive and unequivocal loss, what will be her motivation level to go back to square one and go forward, take a step back on the contention ladder? Like when she gets back to her presumably adorable 4-month-old baby, what is her level of motivation going to be to go back into camp, get back into shape, make that weight cut again to take on somebody further down the ladder than the girl who just beat her? And that, I don't know. That's a question she'll have to answer. But these two fighters have only seen their ceiling if they've decided that's the case. Neither of them has unsolvable technical problems.
Just jump in, and if it's okay, I just want to jump in and
Yeah, of course.
Rebuttals to both Jay and Ben's point.
Rebuttals. Oh God.
Never rebuttals. Like just counterpoints. Let's say. Jay, you made the point about striking and taking, let's say, 8 months, 9 months to practice or train boxing, Muay Thai, whatever it may be. Is that enough to get you on the level of somebody that's been training in that discipline for 16 years? Of course not. But the goal of that is to bring your striking up to a competent level enough to then be complementary to your grappling, to be able to get you in positions to get your takedowns. When we're talking about Damian Maia not being able to, get takedowns, large parts of that is because his striking has never been worked on to get him closer, to get him to clinch up and then go to takedowns. On top of that, we've talked about this before, I think, on the show. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners really struggle with the wrestling department in MMA.
Yeah.
And that also needs to be a thing that's probably focused on, if not maybe more so than the striking. The striking is something that obviously grapplers, wrestlers, or BJJ practitioners should work on when they're coming into MMA, because your striking is probably atrocious and you need competent level striking in the UFC level. However, what you need more so than anything is the other grappling discipline to complement your grappling style. Mm-hmm. That's what you need more so than anything. So like a Mackenzie Dern maybe leaving Black House and going to like an AKA would be fantastic for her, in my opinion. Really work on the wrestling side of her game, as well as slowly bring up her striking to a competent level. And with Kron, same issue. Like, you need to bring his wrestling game up to a different level, to where he's going for doubles and singles and chain wrestling, because from what I remember, he really didn't go for takedowns against Cub Swanson.
They try to swarm for clinches, and then
like a body lock something.
There was never really a duck under double. There's never really went to a single, then train wrestle to a double against the cage. None of that. No,
he just pulled guard.
So more so than the striking for both of these people, they need to work on the other sides of grappling, because that's clearly the thing that's going to get them farther. Khabib is great because he's not an all-around fantastic fighter, but he is a fantastic grappler in every sense of the word. Fantastic at submissions and wrestling. And clearly, both of these fighters are only good at submissions and not good at the other aspects of grappling. And that hurts them probably more so than their striking.
And you mentioned Dern having to go to AKA. She just now pulled out of her next fight due to injury. So thanks, Hunter.
All right. Sorry.
So these two fights kind of brought this thought into my head, and please talk me off a ledge if I'm going crazy here, but I'm starting to think that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the worst base for an MMA fighter. Because you think about wrestling, of course, that's the base that everyone goes to as the number one. If you just come in as a pure wrestler, you have the ability to at least take the fight down and lay and pray for a 3-round decision. If you are a boxer or a kickboxer and you have at least remotely decent takedown defense, you could presumably just piece up somebody and batter them. or you have the chance of landing that one kill shot before anything else can get set up. If you only have jiu-jitsu, you're going to have a hard time getting a decent takedown, and you're going to have a hard time dealing with anything on the feet when that takedown attempt fails. So does that sound like a reasonable point, everybody?
You know, it's an interesting thing you bring up there, because once you started saying that, I started thinking about the names in BJJ that we've seen compete. You know, you think of the best names that have ever competed in ADCC and the Mundials and all the rest of them. Maya, not a champion. Jacare, Strikeforce champion very shortly. Verdum got one done because stuff happened, and then we saw what happened the rest of it. You know, Shields had his own situation of BJJ, American Jiu-Jitsu. But it's a really interesting point you have, that it's going to sound totally stupid for me to say, a goof in a Hawaiian shirt saying this, but every single one of them has a very visible ceiling that they have encountered in their respective careers. They've run into a point where this is it. This is as good as it's going to get unless they can catch somebody with something. And that's tough. It's not even a puncher's chance when it comes to that point, because if you can stay away, then there's no punch to be, you know, proverbial punch to be hit with in a guillotine or a pulling guard or something like that. That if you don't go down with them and they can't make you go down, then there's no shot for them to win. If exactly as Hunter said, if they don't have the other parts to back up their game. So that is a really interesting point.
Yeah, and then also think about the members of the Gracie family that have had failed stints in mixed martial arts. Even think back to a gentleman like Barillo Estima, who came into MMA with some level of hype based on his jiu-jitsu credentials, couple fights, and he just kind of went away. So I think there's a lot of evidence pointing to jiu-jitsu not being the best base if you're going to rely on one discipline. What do you have to add to this, Matt?
I mean, I've been saying this for a long time. I think I said in the trenches with you and Jason that BJJ is the worst sort of discipline to come in with only. Like, if you're going to come in, at least be a Muay Thai fighter, at least be a wrestler. Those guys have the best bases, period, end of story. BJJ is probably the worst base to have coming into MMA. And, like, just to add fighters to the list that Jay said, you know, Gunnar Nelson, Charles Oliveira. You know, if you really start thinking about guys that are fantastic BJJ practitioners that come into MMA, if they really don't add other aspects to their game, they struggle. Think about Charles Oliveira, how long it took him to add Muay Thai to his game and make that like an actual, like, adequate part to his arsenal. And even then, he still hit a ceiling, you know? Like, these guys, I think that, you know, I've done very little BJJ training, so maybe it's wrong of me to say this, but I just feel like the way BJJ is I think Jason made this point, like the way it prides itself on, like, we're the best, like we have all the answers, like our own gym has all the answers. That gym down the street, that's a BJJ gym. They don't have the answers. Like, that mentality hurts them, and it's not really there in other disciplines. Like, boxing, you see guys switch camps, switch gyms all the time to go learn and adapt their game. You see guys go to different countries to adapt their game all the time in boxing. Muay Thai is the same. Karate is the same. Taekwondo is the same. Wrestling is obviously the same, for God's sake. You see wrestlers cross-pollinate all across the world. So it just seems like there is this really regimented, like, pride within BJJ that actually hurts them more than anything else.
Yeah. Good points there. So let's move on to another aspect of UFC Tampa. One a lot less pleasant to talk about, and that was the fight between Mike Davis and Thomas Gifford. One of the just most disgusting displays of non-refereeing and non-cornering that I can recall in recent memory in the sport. Mike Davis gets a knockout win, a faceplant KO with, I think it was 4 minutes, 45 seconds into the final round. By the time it happened, it felt unnecessary. It felt like something we didn't need to see. Now, we got to give credit to the Florida State Boxing Commission for pulling the referee, Andrew Glenn, from the rest of the card. And so let's talk about that decision now. Is everybody in agreement that that was the right call to make?
Yes.
By pulling referee.
Yes.
How about you, Duffy?
I understand why they did it. I'm not sure it was necessary. You know, like that's kind of where I'll leave that. Like I understand why, like, there by the end of that fight there was a lot of visceral emotion going on. You know, like they probably could have gotten the majority in the arena to like agree to take the man outside and hang him. So, you know, to relieve him of his duties for the remainder of the evening was pretty mild by comparison.
So would you have stopped that if you were in the third man in the cage or the corner?
I would, if I were in the corner, absolutely. If I were the referee, I would like to think I would, but I'm not comfortable saying with 100% certainty what I would have done in, like, you know, a fast-moving real-time situation under duress, because, yeah, you know, the guy got destroyed, but the sequence that the fight was finally stopped on was not itself particularly bad. So I can just see being there as an observer kind of like, well, if I didn't stop it for what happened 20 seconds ago, why would I stop it for this that isn't as bad? If I were in his corner, absolutely would have stopped it. You know, and in the wake of it, if you followed it on social media, there's been finger pointing, you know, saying the ref should have stopped it sooner. But you know what? If you were in that fighter's corner and you thought it should have been stopped sooner, you could have stopped it at literally on any moment just by climbing up to the edge of the cage with a towel in your hand. Didn't even have to throw it, and the ref would have stopped it.
I definitely agree with Ben's, I think, implicate or sort of what you're saying is that the corner is probably more at fault than probably the ref is. I 100% agree with you. But,
or if not, the corner has absolutely the least right of anybody to complain. Because they were the only other people in the arena with the power in their hands to do something about it.
Agree with that, absolutely. Now, you sort of push back on the commission pulling it from the card outright. What do you think would have been the most optimal thing for the commission to do in that occasion or that situation?
Something I've seen John McCarthy do in Brazil. The most experienced ref on site take him aside and say, "What the fuck, dude? Get your head in the game." It's not like the guy hasn't reffed hundreds of fights. It's not like he doesn't know what he was doing. He made a mistake. He dropped the ball, and it wasn't even like a single lapse in judgment. You know, as it turns out, if he had reffed the rest of his responsibilities that night, would he have been subjected to that kind of situation again? Not really.
It was Vic versus
Nico Price.
He would not have been needed.
Or Price would still be beaten on James Vick's face right now. It seems to me, and I know Matt and I, we talked about this on the Walk of Shame to some extent, that MMA just has this hesitance to stop the fight in an effort to preserve the health and safety of someone who clearly is not going to win. The Pete Sale, Scott Smith comebacks of the world just don't happen often enough to allow a man to get battered that badly in hopes that a miracle is going to happen. I just can't get behind it.
Yeah, I wish the commissions be more responsive like this. I really do, because, I mean, at some point everybody is at fault, and you can go down the list. Thomas Gifford was asked after the second round. I think his father, by the way, his dad was in his corner. So
Which
you think
fathers are among the worst cornermen ever?
I mean, you think that he wouldn't look at Thomas and go, he's still my boy, and throw the damn towel. No, he let him go to his doom because I can do it. I can get back in there. Throwing in the towel is kind of a lost art. So much so that Big John said, I think it was a year or two ago on one of his little Ask BJM things on social media, that it is actually a foul in terms of corner interference if the corner throws in the towel in the unified rules. That the corners are not allowed to throw in the towel, but it still calls the fight. So I don't understand.
Yeah, it disqualifies the fighter whose corner throws it in. So
right, yeah. But just to bring up my depressing stat of the day, because we've got to come full circle. Roberto Souza threw in the towel for his brother That happened at Rizin 19. That's how he lost. And then he went on and then tapped out to strikes later. So it still exists to an extent. But I had already given Davis 2 10-8 rounds. I had already scored the fight 10-8 for the first and the second rounds. If Gifford had made it another 15 seconds, he would have gotten a 10-7. That's the moment where you go, no, we shouldn't ever have to score. A fight shouldn't be 30-24. That's when you know something's gone wrong, I feel. And so I think that was my issue, viscerally, emotionally, or just from a, oh my God, did I just score the second round 10-8 too? Is this guy, what am I doing here? What are they doing here? So everyone needs to get their act together. You know, we don't have to have an if he dies mentality. We just, sometimes there need to be safety involved. And I think that was one of those cases where somebody should have come to their senses and, done the right thing.
It reminded me of Nick Diaz throwing in the towel against Josh Thompson when he fought Nate Diaz. I think the towel happened to be thrown just as the referee was moving in to stop the fight. But yeah, like that sort of mentality is something that's grossly needed in mixed martial arts. Mm-hmm. I know people have said this before, but I don't think we can say it enough because this will happen. There will be someone who dies in the octagon or dies after they get out of that cage. It will happen. And we're going to look at fights like this as an example of how someone dies. Just this weekend in the undercard of the Usyk fight, had a gentleman who now is fighting for his life in critical condition because he hit his head on the canvas too hard and had a convulsion in the middle of the ring and has not been conscious since. So this is a game of life and death that we're playing here. It would be nice if the officials, if the cornermen actually respected that to the extent of power that they actually have to prevent some of these tragedies. So, all right, let's go beyond this because we did have a lot of other fights. We also had yet again the record was set for the greatest event in martial arts history. Something that will forever change the stratosphere of everything combat arts that we've ever seen in human history, with a record of 76 trillion people watching, with another 84 billion in attendance. One championship had part 1 and 2 of their century event in Tokyo. Angela Lee, probably the biggest story out of that. Maybe Aung San got the win over Brandon Vera to defend his light heavyweight title, but Angela Lee has become a champ with a suplex that one has deemed illegal in the past. Jay, do you think one is actually going to follow through on the rules that they seem to be making up as they go along?
Nope, they're not. And that's kind of depressing for a myriad of reasons. So fasten your seatbelts, gentlemen. I have a couple words to say about this one championship broadcast.
Can I just give the warning first? Chaudhry, come on down to the front row. Come get this work.
Please,
come
join
to the
me.
front row. Come on, get this work. Come on, sit there.
Join me in my parlor.
Have a seat. Come on, right here. So get this work.
So it's in the rules very clearly, as shown on the broadcast. This is an image, a graphic shown, and things that have been said in the past. No suplex or spike to the head, neck, or spine. This has been displayed. This has been said multiple times. On March 2018, Chaudhry Jedrzejczyk, the CEO, founder, whatever position he is today, said, quote, "At one championship, all variations of suplexes are illegal, and any attempt or intent results in an automatic disqualification. This has occurred 3 times in one championship history, all in 2018, surprisingly. And last year, the most recent suplex disqualification came from Christian Lee, Angela Lee's brother, who was disqualified after suplexing his opponent. So, surprisingly, one championship, at least to my knowledge, hasn't commented, mentioned, seen anything or said anything to the matter other than Angela Lee in a post-fight press conference saying, I think it was legal. I didn't really see the footage, and it was okay. Unless something has come to our attention that we really need to know, nothing is going to happen. And that is wrong. It should be an automatic DQ in accordance with the way they have done things already. Her win taken away, and the championship wants her to win, so she's going to win. So I have a bone to pick with one as a whole, and a part of it is enforcing the rules, part of it is the show itself. One championship is the kid in kindergarten that nobody's paying attention to. So he starts screaming and screaming at the top of his lungs, so everyone looks at him and pays attention, but they haven't stopped screaming. They have not stopped. They have not relented. People are looking, people are paying attention, seeing their show. Oh, okay, whatever. They're watching now, and they're still screaming at us. You don't have to tell us this is the biggest event, this is the biggest fight, this is the biggest title, this is the biggest championship of championships in the world. You don't have to tell us that, because if you're telling us that, it's not. It's not the biggest event. This was said on the broadcast of One Championship Part 2, which there was one kickboxing match on the card between Giorgio Petrosian, Sami Sana for the kickboxing tournament championship. There was one kickboxing match. There was also Muay Thai, but one kickboxing match that was said that this is the biggest kickboxing event in history. That this was the biggest one. The biggest one, not any of the K1s we can think of the past, the Semi Schultz, the Alistair Overeems, all along the way, all the way back. Nope, this is the biggest one with one fight. This was everything. Let's not forget that Giorgio Petrosian advanced in the tournament because the promotion decided the loss that he earned in the opening round should have been a no contest because the ref didn't call clinching. And so therefore, his loss that he earned, that he rightfully earned, shouldn't be the case. He should come back in the tournament and he should be forced to rematch his opponent. Well, what do you know? Petrosian went on to win and just won in the tournament. I believe don't quote me on this, but I believe he's an Evolve MMA fighter, which is owned and operated by
Petrosian.
Chatri Citradong.
Petrosian?
So,
he's on their instructors list, yeah.
Yeah, he's one of
yes, he is a and the owner of the company is the owner of One Championship is also the owner of Evolve, the camp that Petrosian won, that he just won $1 million. Therefore, a percentage of his purse automatically would go to his training camp, which, what do you know, kicks right back all the way around.
Chatri's also an instructor there too, by the way. So that's so
this is the biggest event in martial arts history. This is also said on the broadcast, the biggest event in martial arts history. And multiple times in the past 2 days, they said there were 2.6 billion potential viewers. This is their new line. This is what they're saying. Stop. One Championship. Dear One Championship. Here, I'm going to write you my Christmas list. One, knock it off. The arena was not packed. They said it was packed multiple times. This is a packed show. This is a big thing. And then anytime the lights would shine around the audience, you know what it wasn't? Packed. So everything in One Championship is at full volume. Everything is happening 100%. Everybody's screaming at us, almost like I'm doing right now. It's not the best card in history. It's not the biggest set of fights, the craziest something. I mean, let's be honest. This isn't even their biggest event this year.
It wasn't the biggest event of the weekend.
Yeah, it wasn't the biggest event of any of the. It wasn't their biggest event. I actually did this because I am a masochist in the fight game and started keeping track of how many times somebody on the broadcast said the word champion or a derivative or version thereof. Champion, championship, champ, one of the above. After the first hour, they blew past 100. And I got to say, I couldn't do it.
What?
One championship. I'm sorry, I'm almost there. I'm almost free. So Shinya Aoki was the co-main event of the big card. Shinya Aoki, former champion. Okay, he's a name, he's everything. Baka Survivor, which is not the most recognizable song in Japanese MMA, by the way. That would probably go to, Sandstorm or Wild Boys, or, you can go down the list. So Shinya Aoki, former champion, fought against Honorio Benario. We can make the jokes about honor. Who Benario, by the way, has the most losses in One Championship history. So one of the winningest fighters is fighting the losingest. And this is the biggest thing. This is the second biggest thing they have to give us. Now, Chiavello, I love Michael Chiavello. I think of the memories I've had watching him call fights. Zambitas Shahid and K1 Max in 2010 was infinitely more enjoyable because he was freaking out. Because when he was freaking out, I felt that it was okay for me to freak out at how dramatic and exciting that fight was. Jorge Santiago, Kazuo Mizaki, and Sengoku. Another fight he called tremendous already. And then he brought it to that level because he was us. At the moment, he was us. Oh my God, this is the best thing ever. Not every fight in one championship is there any of those fights. It's not one of those. It's not Chiavello calling a Danny Mayanis fight. Look it up if you hadn't before. It's not one of those. At the end of the broadcasts, which span 22 fights and 12 hours, like the viewer right now, I'm sure, and my fellow panelists, I felt abused, and I was exhausted by the end of the card. I was hammered into submission. I was shouted at. This is how it has to be. This is how every card is going to be. How? How can this be? How can this be a thing? If this is the biggest ever, what is One Championship 101 like? Well, it's not. It has Sebastian Kadistan. Respect to him, but at some point, we all have to say, okay, who are you trying to convince? Who are you trying to fool? It's not working, and it just hurts. It hurts me, it hurts you, it hurts the viewers listening to me yell about these things. It's not fun when you're telling me what I'm supposed to think about your card. When your event, your biggest, your best, your greatest, your everything. Just let me enjoy the card. Let me write about it afterwards. Don't hurt me in the process. And then we have to pay for these cards as well. There's a paywall. So all in all, One Championship, please just pump the brakes.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Stop giving Mitch Chilson caffeine. Let's try that. That would be very helpful. The whole the hundreds of champions that they have, that always irritates the hell out of me. I just find that hilarious. I remember one event not too long ago where they were announcing the records, but they were like giving their like amateur wrestling records. They were giving like their point fighting karate records. And it was like, what the hell is going on here? Why are we doing this? What is the point of all of this? Why are let us enjoy kickboxing with little gloves. We don't need all the bullshit attached to it. That would thank you, Chatri, for this TED talk. Matt, it looks like you're just bursting at the seams with a thought you want to add to this.
And I don't have much to add because I'll be honest, I didn't watch the card. I'm not gonna sit for 12 fucking hours and watch guys I barely know and get yelled at through the screen that these are the best fights ever. Jay, by the way, that was probably a 10 out of 10 rant. And trust me, I'm an expert at ranting. That was flawless. And I agree.
Petey Carroll will be proud.
I agree with literally every single point that you made. And
thank you.
I don't even know what to add. Like, I think One Championship has a lot of issues, and the first part that you mentioned about just the conflict of interest that is just so blatant throughout One Championship, the lack of transparency, the lack of oversight and regulation really on One Championship are all massive concerns. And at the same time, they're yelling at us that they're the most innovative when it comes to regulation. Stop lying to us. Stop yelling at us when you're lying to us. We're done with the bullshit. And I'll be honest. Look, any sort of regional MMA or regional combat sports period, if you're behind a paywall that's not already a service like The Zone where I have a lot of other combat sports to watch, I'm not going to get it. So like this whole Bleacher Report Live thing experiment, it's not going to work. I'm never going to get it. I'm never going to watch your cards on that. Why? Because I'd never go to that. Like there's no reason for me to go to Bleacher Report Live or whatever it's called, because you're the only thing that's in the combat sports world that's on that app. It was a massive mistake to make that deal.
So let's keep the good times rolling, and we're going to talk about some of the other wonderful happenings in mixed martial arts right now. So we've got a coinciding with a very thorough examination of Ali Abdelaziz by friend of the show Michael Fidel of Body Lock MMA. Ali he had a hell of a week last week. So Matt and I were in attendance at the Dominance MMA Media Day.
Oh man,
which had happened at the Tyson Ranch, and there was we got some good content out there. You could check the Sherdog.com YouTube page or Bix Combat Radio's YouTube page for some of the one-on-one interviews that we did. Kamaru Usman, Henry Cejudo, got a really interesting one with Mike Tyson as well. So
amazing one with Mike Tyson where he's smoking weed in it. So you gotta go watch that.
Yeah, you gotta watch Mike Tyson smoke weed. So yeah, now the PFL playoffs took place a few days after this media day, and actually at the media day, Rumble Johnson, who had the mic for a second, told a story that a lot of you might be familiar with at backstage at UFC 150, which featured Frankie Edgar and Benson Henderson. I believe that was in Denver. Malky Kawa and Ali Abdelaziz got into somewhat of a scuffle. Apparently, Ali dropped him with a single punch, and people were held back, and it turned into a big ruckus outside of one of the press conferences, I believe. Now, just a couple days after he told this story, the Ali violence toward the Kawa brothers continues as he apparently sucker slapped Abraham, and in plain sight had some police after him, whatnot. Apparently, he's being charged with a battery. Gentlemen, I mean, we've talked about him in particular. We've talked about poor conduct from managers. We've talked about a lot of these intertwining issues in mixed martial arts. But now, Ali is in something else. Now, what are we, as a media community or just MMA period, what are we supposed to do with Ali Abdelaziz at this point? Ben, I will start with you, my man.
I don't see how he is not at this point barred from entering any fight venue on fight day. Leaving aside the rest of the Ali Abdelaziz story, which is enormous and expansive, but ultimately at this point involves a bunch of allegations that have not been proven or really even addressed in a court of law. So let's leave all those aside for a moment. What we do know is that he gets into scuffles on fight night in the venue. How is this man not barred from being there? Like, there don't even need to be criminal charges filed. The people running the show simply need to declare him persona non grata. I think that can and should happen without waiting for, the double secret Mike Russell tapes to come out.
I will add more for like us as media, what we can do, because there's always questions about like us and like whether or not we're doing a good job. Like, just keep reporting on it. Like, if your other media members listening to this right now, like, keep making articles, keep making content, keep making videos about this. Like, at the very least, just keep shedding light on this story. At the very least, keep shedding light on Michael Fidel's article, because that's a fantastic write-up on kind of the concise Ali Abdelaziz story. And at the best of it, it actually does sort of shed away some of the allegations that is hard to prove at this point in time, that I hope at one point we can talk about, because there are some really serious allegations that at this point it just feels wrong in some way to talk about. But the ones we do know about, like Ben says, he's in public fights and altercations and battery cases all over the place. Why is this not an issue? Why is this no longer an issue where promoters are saying, hey, you're no longer allowed in our events? Obviously, in Michael's piece, he talks about PFL, which was World Series of Fighting, and their literal ties and relationship with Ali Abdelaziz, and how Ali Abdelaziz has, 40 to 70% of the roster of PFL right now are Ali's guys. So it's just this issue where you have this agent who has such a sort of monopsony power when it comes to bullying promotions. And honestly, I mean, both of these classes of people's promoters and managers are some of the most predatory classes of people in this community. So of course they're not going to do anything about it. We have literally designed apparatuses and institutions to govern those people, because they are the people that cannot be trusted the most. So in a bigger grand scheme of things, like, until we get more legislation or more regulation when it comes to managers and promoters, like none of this is really going to get solved long term. And just a ban at events from certain promoters is a Band-Aid at best, but it's at least a short-term Band-Aid that will at least do something.
All right, Jay, let me get your thoughts on the ever-growing complex and I guess violent world of Ali Abdelaziz and how it intertwines with our sport.
Well, something we touched on a few weeks back was about how media members and organizations can have concern over the fact that if they ask tough questions, they'll be barred from future access. And they'll be concerned about they might not get interviews with people, they may not be asked to come back, the like. There is a legitimate concern that if we the media community, whomever it may be, pressed on these questions, well, that's a wrap from Dominance MMA, who just happens to have some of the biggest fighters in the sport. And the concern for access has apparently outweighed the concerns to push the issue, because without getting into any allegations, we are aware of this. We are aware of these situations. We have been aware of these for quite some time. We've known it. We've seen the footage. So these allegations are to the point where there is visible evidence of some of these actions taking place. How many fights have been caught on camera, for a sheer example? 3, 4 more in the past few years. And that's just a drop in the bucket. That's just nothing compared to all the history, the lawsuits with World Series of Fighting and Ali Abdelaziz being marked as the senior vice president and representing fighters and serving as the matchmaker. It's an inherent problem that isn't just with PFL and World Series of Fighting, but it's something that we as media apparently only have the ability to shine light on the issue, because we're not licensing bodies, we're not promoters, we're not organizations that can set these things. All we can do is talk about it. But the concern for access and fights, it's the balance that we have. I mean, the conflict of interest, and please don't let me get started on conflict of interest, where head coach of Demetrius Johnson, Matt Hume, just so happens to have written the rules for one championship, and that commentators explicitly stated on the broadcast Demetrius Johnson knew best how to exploit and score points and pick up wins. Let's not go back on that rant wagon. We know about it. We know what has gone on. But it's time for somebody else to. It has been for a long time. But I'm hoping that this expose that Fidel wrote is being picked up. I've already been seeing it being picked up by large mainstream outlets. Will be addressed and will be handled. Because what do we always say in the political world? Sunshine is the greatest disinfectant. Yes. So hopefully this is a step in the right direction to handle this situation.
And just to add to that point, Era Hawani on his show brought up the article. That's a huge, credit for that.
That's ESPN.
Yeah, so definitely want to give a big shout out to Michael Fidel for continuing some excellent work on the investigative side of this fine so-called sport of ours. Now, continuing with the bad behavior that we've seen in MMA, now I guess I don't think we can actually just say who it is, but we can just say that he is an Irish sports star who isn't quite friends with Ali. So that's one thing for sure we can say. But apparently an Irish sports star has been accused of another sexual assault outside of a pub in Dublin. So because of the Irish laws as far as reporting alleged crimes, not a lot of details are being released right now to even, definitively ID this mysterious Irish sports star. But I think we have a good idea who they could be talking about, and we will keep you apprised of all the latest happenings as they develop. One of many cases going on in that gentleman's world. So now let's go along to just pure fight talk, which is something we desperately need after that walk into the dark side for a little bit there. So
I don't know no, that was a great thing. That was the light side. Jay ranting was perfect. Let's not forget that.
I will say this, Jay, that was a classic rant, and I'm very proud of you. You rant with the best of them.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing. Waiting for the Duffy rant. The Duffy rant. Oh, that's going to be beautiful. Duffy's just too calm. Yeah, I can't wait for the Duffy rant. Now let's
go. BKFC. Yep. Let's talk BKFC.
Yeah, well, we got plenty of that work for Dave Feldman. He can come down and get this work too. But let's go ahead and talk about what your gentlemen thought was the fight of the weekend between Rizin, between Bellator's European card, the UFC One Championships mega events. We had some boxing and stuff this weekend as well. So, fellas, let me know what your fight of the weekend was. Matt, I'll start with you.
Don't start with me. Hold on.
Okay, Ben, I'll start with you.
Now, I'm going to be very honest and say that of the 77 fights in major promotions this weekend, I watched about 25 of them until now. I will continue catching up through Wednesday, and then after Wednesday, it'll be time to start worrying about what's coming this weekend. So I'll be lucky if I get to 40 of the 77. But for a UFC card that at the top had a couple of fights that were extremely entertaining, even though they were pretty much one-way traffic, I just enjoyed the hell out of the Swanson and Gracie fight. At risk of just kind of sounding like a casual fan and marking out, I mean, it felt like a happening. Like I talked about last weekend, Kron Gracie being a Gracie on a slightly different level than some other people that carry that name into the cage or ring in the latter half of the 2010s. Not every Gracie has gyms everywhere refusing to train with his opponent. You know what I mean? So to see the way the fight unfolded and to see a baffling game plan from a frankly baffling guy and have it not pan out for him, but I mean, there was zero wilt or zero quit in him. I mean, he was going to come forward and do the same damn dumb thing in the last minute of the last round. It was my fight of the weekend, even though Swanson won every minute of the fight. And I don't mind that once in a while, as long as I'm learning something about the fighters. I'm learning something new. I'm not watching something that I feel I've just seen 300 times before with different faces and names substituted. So the co-main event of UFC Tampa was my fight of the weekend.
All right. So Jay, what was your fight of the weekend?
So I'd have to say it took place at No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding after that rant. There was entertaining matches. Rizin had a card as a whole. There's not a fight I want to point to that was just wildly violent. It was exactly what you expected and hoped it would be. You look at the card and go, I hope this happens, and I hope it's fun to watch. Well, it happened, and it was fun to watch. But my fight of the weekend, I would have to say, is Luis Pena and Matt Frevola. I think that was fun in every facet of the level. It was competitive. It was exciting. It had back and forth moments. I gave the fight to Frevola. 29-28. I had Pena winning the second round, but I understand the desire to have it the other way. I have no issues with it whatsoever. Now, first of all, I want to plug a buddy of mine, Jordan Colbert. He has a new show called Blunt Force Trauma, and it's about him imbibing and enjoying himself and discussing the merits of CBD and THC with professional athletes. His first episode just came out this week, and it was with Pena. So that was kind of a nice little thing to see. Yes, there you go. It was back and forth, and it was wild, and it had that moment. Every great fight has to have that moment where you go, yes, something wild happened. Pena goes like this. He winds his arm back around and leaps in the air with a flying knee and drills Frevola right on the chin. What a comic book, silly, funny moment. There's no way that's going to happen. Whoa, with a fake arm, flying knee, and it lands flush and sends Frevola flying, and it's dramatic. Frevola gets his bearings back. He suplexes Pena. Just action, excitement, fun, and it's the kind of fight where you flip a coin to see who's going to win the fight at the end. The crowd chanted steamroller at one point, and Frivola actually got energized and charged at Pena and started hurting him. And it just was that you can write it up and go, all right, I'm happy with what just happened. So, that's my fight of the weekend.
Now, for mine, because I got confused when you said boxing too. So I went to the boxing card, made sure that there's no secret fight that I forgot about. That was of the weekend. No, that card was trash. Honestly, you don't need.
I thought maybe I missed something on there.
If you haven't seen it, I'll be honest, you don't need to watch.
Usyk fought Reese Witherspoon though. I thought that would have been fun.
You know what? I thought it was too.
You say Reese Witherspoon? You
can just watch Sweet Home Alabama, Legally Blonde, or any other movie that she's been in. Much better. But mine was gonna be Luis Pena actually. So Jay stole mine.
That was mine too.
As it, knocking James Vick while not a fight of the night or fight of the weekend. Oh my God! What a knockout of the weekend! What a moment of the weekend! And anytime James Vick gets knocked out, you can bet your fucking dollar it's gonna be a great knockout. So I'll pick that.
Yeah, so both of you guys took the couple that I had. And one note about the Luis Pena's flying knee. So I edit the Blunt Force Trauma show, and in some of the footage that we didn't end up using, there was footage of Pena doing pad work. And he did that same sequence with the flying knee. So to see him actually pull it off was pretty dope. That was pretty dope. So I will go ahead and just jump on the grenade known as the greatest martial arts event in human history. The main event of part 1, Angela Lee versus Jingneng Zhao, was a very, very good fight. That was suplex controversy aside, that was an entertaining back and forth fight, and I'm always partial to 5-rounders that go for the full 5 rounds. And if you have a finish at the end of a 5-rounder, oh man, what the best of both worlds. So I definitely enjoy that fight. Did not enjoy all the hyperbole on the commentary though. So there's that. Now let's move along from there to my favorite segment. And that is the aptly titled, I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcon. So this is where you get to tell me your thing that surprised you the most: pre-fight coverage, the fights themselves, post-fight coverage, or any news related. I will start with you, Jay. What is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcon's moment?
So we had 77 fights take place this weekend, and I am either ashamed or proud, probably the former, to admit that I have seen all 77. It's been a weekend. It's been a weekend. Well, I write about them for my Fight Facts pieces, and I'm not going to write about something I haven't seen. So that means, there you go. Here it is. Bellator app. I had to work with a legal version. Don't worry, there's no funny business going on. A Android emulator. Those are open source to watch the Bellator app going on the other side. 1.5 surprising moments. First of all, surprised. Kayla Harrison was closed as a minus 5,000 favorite over her short notice opponent. Minus 5,000, which is the biggest betting favorite in PFL history. There's never been a 50-1 favorite in an event they've had odds with. And it made sense. I was not surprised by that. Don't worry. Sarah Kaufman was the heir to the challenger throne. That would be Sarah Kaufman versus Kayla Harrison in the women's lightweight finals. That was what we all expected. Everybody said going into it, well, we know it's going to be Harrison versus Kaufman at the end, and we'll go, okay, now what do we do? Surprise, it's not. Larissa Pacheco grounded and just grounded Kaufman for 3 rounds. And there wasn't much pound. It was more ground. Held her and worked her for 3 minutes or for 5 minutes or however long it lasted. It was a long experience, and won. And she shocked us all and won, getting a rematch, although she got handled by Harrison earlier. But Sarah Kaufman did not advance, and that was shocking to me.
Oh, wow. All right. Ben.
Duffy wants to jump in, though, I think.
Are you surprised, Mr. Falcons?
I watched 2 fights from the PFL card. That was one of them, and it was not riveting watching.
No.
Mm-hmm. The other one is my I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment, because what should have been my fight of the weekend, Cooper versus Sadibou Sy, was a draw.
Yeah.
You know, PFL's whole structure, the first season, last season, during the regular season, it gave us some fantastic entertainment. It gave us some great finishes, some just kind of energetic feeling of any crazy thing might happen at this moment. And ever since then, their rule set has just tripped over its own feet. It's literally made boring fights out of fights that should have been exciting, and that is the exact opposite of what a gimmicky setup is supposed to do. Like literally, you come up with a gimmicky setup when you need to add some pizzazz to a bunch of fighters that might be good but aren't recognizable names, and it is just killing them right now. So that's my I'm not surprised Mr. Falcon's moment, is that aside from Kayla Harrison, you know, the rule set just snuffed a fight between probably two of their 5 or 6 biggest names left.
Preach.
Just snuffed it.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, this has not been the most enjoyable season of PFL, with such a stark contrast to what they offered last season. So Matt, tell me what surprised you, Mr. Falcons.
To bring it back to boxing, actually, it has to be Usyk's heavyweight debut. I mean, you have a guy that is pound for pound top 5 in the world in boxing, guy that was undisputed in the cruiserweight division, and then moving up to heavyweight, he has literally had every single mistake and back step you can sort of have. You know, injured his elbow, 2 fighters pull out, and then he gets Chaz Witherspoon, aka Reese Witherspoon's long lost brother, as a late notice replacement on 4 days' notice. A guy that was relevant literally over a decade ago, losing to Chris Arreola in 2008. And you would think that he was going to come in here and just starch this guy. And honestly, he kind of struggled. He got hit with a bunch of right hands down the pipe. You know, being the southpaw, he was opening himself up to the right hand from the orthodox fighter and just got hit a lot. And the narrative and the momentum of Usyk has definitely shifted than what it was just a year ago after the Tony Bellew win. So pretty shocking there.
All right, so I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment. I gotta put it on myself, because the staff picks for Sherdog.com, I've had a miserable 2 weeks. We all suffered last week, and I didn't see what everyone did this week, but I was definitely probably the worst out of everyone. I have gone in the past 2 weeks 1 for 9 of my picks. This has been an atrocious 2 weeks. Man, this is...
If only you listen to like your good friends like me, Ben, Jay, you know, Cole, obviously.
Don't listen to me. I'm competing against him.
Yeah, don't mention Cole here.
I mean, anyone. Cole. I mean, first off, how dare you on Gracie to beat?
We don't even say the name of Coldemort here. He is he who must not be named.
But you know what? I mean, I've said this about fight picking before. It's not it's never an exact science. I think as long as you have like some sort of intelligent rationale behind your pick, I'll take it. So whatever. I'll be back. It's normal. I'm back. All right. We're gonna move on to the speed bag. My time to shine and flex authority on you mofos. So let me go ahead and get this clock ready to go. Now I will start with you, Matt. You're gonna have 10 seconds to answer this question. Yes, because everyone is going to answer every question. You only have 10 seconds to do it. So let me make sure.
Buckle up, buckaroo.
I was like 30 last time. What happened to the 30 second?
Things have changed, hipster. Things have changed. So you've got 10 seconds to answer this question. What does Kayla Harrison have to gain by signing a long-term deal with PFL besides money and go?
Nothing. Oh, you want me like actually going on?
And no, the seconds do not roll over. Your time is done.
There's nothing to gain from that. Come on. PFL is going to be gone in a year or two. Which, by the way, I have an article coming out in like two weeks or so, which should detail why I think that is the case.
Oh, Hunter, back on the writing game. That's what's up.
Every once in a while, yeah.
All right, Mr. Duffy, you've got 10 seconds to go ahead and answer this question. what does Kayla Harrison have to gain by signing a long-term deal with PFL besides money? Yes, you can go over, and I promise I won't stop you. Go.
Well, she gets her undivided attention. In the UFC or Bellator, she would be a focus, but not the focus. Now, whether it's better to have 5% of the UFC's machine behind you or 50% of the PFL.
Oh my goodness! I said I wouldn't interrupt you, but I lied.
That's a really good point, though.
That was a very good point, by the way.
She's getting more than just a check.
I'm sorry you couldn't say it faster.
It's
now.
I don't know if that really is as much of a good point as maybe you guys are saying. Like PFL is sort of.
Oh my goodness! Your 10 seconds has passed, Hunter. It's Jay's turn now.
Come on, man.
It's Jay's turn now. Jay, you have 10 seconds to answer this. What does Kayla Harrison have to gain by signing a long-term deal to PFL besides the money? And go.
She wants to be the Chris Cyborg of PFL. She wants to be the one that everybody whispers about and goes, oh, I wonder what would happen if she fights. But staying in PFL won't get her better fights. So what do? Nothing.
All right. Ooh, just on time right there. All right. So now the next question, I will start with you on this one, Ben. Is Cain Velasquez making the right call by retiring from MMA to compete in the WWE? And go.
Absolutely. He looks healthy. He looks happy. He's making a ton of money. I'm super happy for him.
All right. To the point. And Matt, you're up. Cain Velasquez making the right move? And go.
I agree with everything Ben just said right there, but I don't agree with anything he said in the last question. And he doesn't want that smoke.
The gauntlet has been thrown. Jay, you have 10 seconds. Is Cain making the right move by choosing the WWE over the UFC? And go.
You know, if he can make money over there and is done with MMA for real, I'm happy for him. Do I want every champion to do that? Absolutely not. But Cain, go right ahead, pal.
All right. Perfect timing. Beautiful work there. Now, next question, Jay. I'm going to start with you on this one. When Rumble Johnson comes back in 2020, who should be his first opponent? You have 10 seconds. Let's do it.
If the UFC is dead set on Stipe DC3, it's painfully obvious to me who it should be. It almost hurts. Francis Ngannou. Come on. Violence.
All right. And Ben, you're up. Who should Rumble Johnson be fighting in 2020? And go.
Any top 10 heavyweight. You know, the holes in his game were not repaired by the time off, so just give him exciting fights.
All right. Good one. And Matt, you're going to close this question out. Who should Rumble be facing next? Go.
Actually, no one at heavyweight. I think he should go back down to light heavyweight and fight Johnny Walker.
he weighs 285 pounds.
Yeah. Nope. I want that Johnny Walker. Yes, give me that at 205.
That reaction was slightly over time, but I will allow it. I will allow it.
I can dig it.
I will add this. You know, he was at the press conference, obviously, with us, and he was pretty, like, I don't know. He seemed like he didn't talk positively about going to heavyweight and fighting the other guys that aren't for a belt. So if you're not going to fight other guys at heavyweight that don't have a belt, why fight at heavyweight? Go to 205. Get a tune-up against one of those easy sort of contenders and fight John Jones.
Yeah, that's
he should be so happy Cormier doesn't have the belt. Oh my God.
And I will add this, because he hasn't entered the USADA testing pool yet. He still has a 6-month sort of training regimen to get back down to 205 for. So the idea that he can't get down to 205, I think, is maybe not as accurate as maybe Ben's laugh.
Did you, Matt? I kind of, I don't know, the signal kind of messed up for a second. Did you say he has 6 months for his cycling? Is that what you said? I'm sorry. It could be something wrong with the microphones and speakers or something.
Tomatoes, my friend.
All right, so now here's the part where you get to enjoy the feedback, and I will answer all 3 questions back to back in 30 seconds. So for the first question, Kayla Harrison, what does she have to gain long-term by a PFL deal? And the clock starts now. Kayla Harrison doesn't really have anything to gain except for being the big fish in a small pond. She can build up her name and buzz that way without taking dangerous fights. Cain Velasquez is definitely making the right move by staying in the WWE. He seems happier there. For whatever reason, he's not blowing out his knee every other day, so that's good. And Rumble Johnson should fight Alistair Overeem when he comes back. They have a prior beef. They don't like each other, and it's a battle of strikers. Why not? Let's do it. And I did that in 28.25 seconds.
quickly, because I still am hung up on this whole PFL thing. PFL is not a small pond. It's more like the equivalent of like the amount of water in a toilet bowl. That's how much water is there. Like
wow,
he's a goldfish in that amount.
Wow, that was harsh.
I thought I was fired on a promotion today.
That was harsh, even for Walkout Network standards.
I mean, look, I know you guys cover the sport for a living, but you ask the average MMA fan to name more than one person that's at PFL, they can't. And the one person they're going to name is maybe Kayla Harrison. And even then, I don't think the average fan even knows what PFL even is. Let's be honest.
Well, that is harsh words from the hipster.
Sorry.
And no apology needed. It is what it is. All right, gentlemen. So the UFC is going back to Boston Friday instead of Saturday.
Yeah.
So mark that one on your calendars. Definitely adjust your schedules accordingly. So the headliner is Dominic Reyes and Chris Weidman in his light heavyweight debut. Now, I want to know what you guys are really looking forward to on this card, aside from the main event. Ben, I will start with you.
I don't know what they're up to with the main event unless they just assume that people in Boston want to see a New York guy get destroyed.
That's it.
Which would be awesome.
So I'm not hoping for much from there. You know, like I've always enjoyed Weidman, but he has seemed like very much a spent force, and Dominic Reyes is not the guy you want to try to bounce back against in a new weight division, 20 pounds up. I may be eating a ton of crow as Reyes is on like the wrong end of a 25-minute wrestle fucking. Like this could always be the fight that Weidman decides to go back to that, but I don't see it. I guess if they were going to remake Stevens versus Rodriguez, great. I'm excited for Barber versus Robertson. You know, like the creepiest guys in the sport get their biggest test yet against a legit, you know, fighter who's been a contender for a long time. We will find out a lot about Macy Barber in this fight. And then your likely fight of the night is Boston Salmon versus Randy Costa. They're two guys on the end of one loss. Neither of them is in danger of their job, but they're both in danger of their hype train being derailed. And I think they're both going to come out with something to prove. And there's just going to be tons and tons of whoop ass for however long that fight lasts.
All right. So Jay, because I know you've researched every single bit of every single fighter on this card. I know you know it all, but condense it as best you can. Name a fight on this card that you're really looking forward to.
I'll fight. Besides Barber, I don't want to step on the toes of the Duffy. I'm going to go with Joe Lozon because he's on a long losing streak. He's 35 years young. Fight years, he's 59, 74. He's way up there in fight years. There's only so much damage and bloodshed and pain he can take. His skin's like tissue paper. But I just almost sounding not impartial, enjoy watching a Joe Lozon fight. Something's going to be crazy. It's going to be violent. And it's going to be fun. It's the kind of fight where it might not be what it used to be, but it used to be mandatory viewing that Joe Lozon's going to go out there and it's probably going to be fight of the night. If it's not, someone's going to come out with submission of the night. It might be Lozon. It might not be. Who knows? He might get tapped out. He might knock the guy out. He might have a scar on his forehead this wide and he'll come out with a surprise win. Who the heck knows? Who cares? Jonathan Pierce is coming off the Contender Series, looking to make a name for himself against an old legend. It's one of those, you know, those kind of matchups, the young lion, the old lion, whatever it is. That's probably the one. But you know what? One thing I'm surprised about, nobody outside of the sphere of the MMA community like us seemed to care or realize that Stevens versus Rodriguez is about to happen. And that was a fight that we were going bonkers over. That was the fight. You know, we had a hard time at the Mexico City card looking at that going, what other fights are interesting? And now we're looking at this fight going, oh, that fight's on it. Oh, okay. That's where it is. I don't know. I feel like it should be nuts. Even if it's 3 rounds instead of 5, it should be fun. Right?
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed. So, Matt, tell me, what is one fight that you're really looking forward to on this card?
Well, because everyone sort of like broke the rules, I'm going to break the rules too and mention other fighters I'm curious about to see. Court McGee's on this card. And I've always been a fan of Court McGee's story. I don't think he's going to win this fight against a undefeated Sean Brady. Right, Sean Brady, right? And I think it might go really bad for him. But, man, I've always been a fan of Court McGee and his story, so I'm glad to see him again. Kevin Holland on this card. I've always been a fan of Kevin Holland ever since he burst on the scene on the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series. Always been a fun, flashy fighter. There's a sort of place for fighters of his ilk. Manny Bermudez versus Charles Rosa. I think 3 years ago.
That's the opener.
If that fight happened 3 years ago, I feel like it would have mattered so much more for the division than it is now. Obviously, you brought Macy Barber. Ben, great fighter. And obviously, if she wins, she might sneak into a title shot at 115. Darian Wynn on the card, obviously coming over from the amazing Golden Boy MMA card that Ann was lucky enough to attend.
Fire.
Yay.
And just want to briefly mention this. It sucks that Greg Hardy is on this card to almost ruin it.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot he was there.
It sucks that any of us mentioned it.
Yeah. I was hoping we could
mention it in a negative light.
I guess. You know what's funny though, guys? The audience is gonna, and this is you can laugh at me if I'm wrong about this. The audience is gonna freak out when Boston Salmon walks out. Just the fact that he's named Boston.
Yeah.
They're gonna go nuts. I should be at this card. If it weren't on a Friday and screwing up my plans, I would have been attending this card, covering it for us. But it's a Friday, so what are you gonna do? But people are gonna go nuts because his name is Boston in Boston. And his last name is Salmon. They go, ha, ha, ha. So it's going to be fun.
And quick other sort of take on this card in the main event specifically. Dominic Reyes, to me, has always been somebody that I've questioned the most in the division. I don't think he has really cleaned up his game and sort of the lack of skill set he really has. You know, he's pretty much a real basic fighter, a come-forward guy that just really uses a lot of pressure and doesn't really throw in combination. This is a fight where if he hasn't really improved, and he, to me, hasn't been improving from fight to fight, and that's a big issue for prospects, he's going to get found out in this fight rather quickly. Or Chris Weidman's just too old and faded in a shot, and he's moving up to 205, and this is just all wrong for him. It's either or for me, and I'm very curious to see how the main event sort of turns out.
As far as the main event is concerned, like I'm very curious as to see what Chris Weidman has left. Maybe this move up to 205 has come a bit too late. I mean, it's something he's talked about for a long time. In fact, I want to say he was close to signing to Bellator before signing to the UFC to fight at light heavyweight. So the move to 205 is something that he's pondered for quite some time, and he's a big guy who cuts a lot to make middleweight. But one of the other middleweight fights on the card is definitely drawn my attention, and that, of course, is Deron Wynn and Darren Stewart. It should be an interesting clash of styles. I mean, Darren Stewart's last fight, a win over Bevan Lewis, was easily one of the worst fights of the year. That was an atrocious fight that was so bad it really could have gone either way without much protest. But Stewart is kind of like the athletic opposite of Deron Wynn, and I'd like to see how that matches up, to see the guy with kind of like caffeine-free Daniel Cormier versus versus like new age Melvin Manhoef. It seems like a very, very strange clash of styles that should provide some clarity as to potential future stars at middleweight. If Deron Wynn gets past this, I expect to see the UFC really put a rocket ship behind his back and propel him as the next chosen guy to get the love of the promotion. And aside from that, I mean, yeah, the Yair Rodriguez and Jeremy Stevens fight has flown so under the radar. I think maybe it's like a self-preservation mechanism that we're all having right now, because we were so excited to be let down so hard. So now let's just shut up and see what happens.
It's not just that, though. Like, the UFC has actually not really told anyone that this fight got
because they learned their lesson too.
Well, what are they gonna use to hype the fight? A nut shot and like guys calling each other gay slurs in the hospital?
Yeah, it's gonna be like slow motion shots of beer flying from the stands. Like,
yeah,
they've shown bus fights and all that garbage before, so they can hype a fight with any footage. They've shown the eagle flying out of the octagon to sell a fight, so they could sell The first fight ended in controversy. Wait to see how they settle the score today.
But the rule is, if you're gonna have some sort of altercation used as a promotion for the next fight, it has to at least classify as a felony. That tends to be the rule. If you didn't destroy property, if you didn't actually hit someone, you didn't dive out into the crowd or do anything like that, sorry, not crazy enough. We can't use it for the commercial. So, let's see here now. Our last segment for the show here, Buried Treasure. This is where you get to tell me about any sort of MMA related stories that are flying under the radar and deserve a bit more attention. So I'm going to start with you, Ben. What is your buried treasure for the week?
What did I say I was going to talk about?
King Mo?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
No, it's totally King Mo. Muhammad Lawal, a longtime contender in every promotion other than the UFC, retired 6 months ago and has unretired and is back to fighting. And is King Mo 41?
Sure.
Sounds
Yeah,
right.
I mean, his last gasp was him washing out of the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix in one of the more miserable fights.
He's 38.
Is that really it?
Wow.
38, yeah.
Wow.
That poor guy.
Yeah, he's a guy that I would have made a fantastic career retrospective to write about, because he is a guy that had everything lined up to be a superstar in this sport, except for sustained success against the best of best competition. If not for that little tiny missing key, the little missing piece,
Missed it by this much.
yeah, he would have been a superstar in the sport. I mean, he's not just an interesting soundbite, but a very intelligent and savvy guy. I mean, he's done radio and video for the sport for a long time. He
wrote for Fight Magazine, I believe, also.
Wrote for Fight Magazine, currently does a podcast for Between Rounds Radio, which is run by the founder of Sherdog Radio, TJ DeSantis. And he is outstanding. And I just wish he'd been willing to kind of move on to that next phase, because I don't know how much more he has to offer competitively in his appearances in the last 5 years across Bellator, Rizin, anywhere. It's not just that he's won or lost, but has just looked kind of flat and dispirited. It's not been appointment viewing, even when he is appointment listening. But he is back, and that's the buried lead of the week that hopefully stays buried.
It's funny you mentioned that, though, because he and Rampage Jackson had a similar kind of disinterest in their careers, and when they fought, it kind of looked like two guys that didn't really want to fight. So,
yeah. And speaking of Rampage, my buried treasure of the week.
Oh, snap!
What a great segue right there, Jay. Is the fact that Rampage Jackson's fighting Fedor Emelianenko, and used to play dice with him. I have to add that part of the story. In a Bellator Rizin matchup show, and
I believe you mean Bellatard.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that was the Freudian slip of last week.
That was Bellator X Rizin.
That's good. And it's just hilarious how, like, in 2019, like, Fedor Emelianenko versus Rampage Jackson is on the third or fourth page of the metaphorical newspaper of MMA, right? Like, it's so far behind the front page that no one's paying attention to it, and it's a little bit sad. And again, a sign of maybe where these regional MMA promotions are actually at in this point in time, and their presence and their actual influence in the scene.
All right, so Jay, let me know what your buried treasure of the week is.
Well, in almost sort of not really following with the theme of fighters that should or have taken time away from the sport, UFC ranked strawweight Nita Ansaroff has announced that she'll be taking a year plus off to start a family with her fiance, Amanda Nunes. And not only is this a good story, all those kinds of things, the soundbite / interview clip that was done through ESPN They interviewed, I say interview, they asked her 2 questions. She gave a very short answer, was remarkable. And now this was only by text, so I didn't get to hear her say this. So just reading this on text, it was very interesting. I'm looking forward to it. That's another wonderful time in my life. I'll enjoy it. Nina's dream is to be a mother before being a UFC champion. Having a child is Nina's biggest dream, and I'm happy to share it with her. That was it. That was her excitement and her elation to the fact that she's starting a family. Now, maybe she was grinning from ear to ear, but it's always been her biggest dream to have a child. So, all right, let's do it. Game on. But good for them.
All right, definitely. And I definitely want to shout out the people who pointed out in the tweet that Mark Raimondi put out, saying that Nina Ansaroff was taking a leave of absence to start a family. The people that were jumping in saying, well, independent contractors can't take a leave of absence. So,
sure.
Yep. So just wanted to drop that little nugget on you. Now, my buried treasure for the week is a story that actually just went live a matter of hours ago as of this recording. I was informed that Andre Ewell, who lost to Marlon Vera over the weekend at the event in Tampa, was the subject of a couple of racial slurs from the corner of Marlon Vera. This was captured. The corner audio was not captured on the ESPN Plus broadcast because they cut to commercial. But for international viewers, they saw this via Fight Pass. So we've independently verified this a couple times over. And, yep, that's what happened. So yet again, we've got to talk about pleasant stuff in conjunction with our favorite sport. So, gentlemen, that's going to do it for this edition of Unleashed. Want to thank you all three for making yet another appearance on the Walkout Network. Appreciate you. And let's tell these good folks where they can find us. And I'll start with our special guest who essentially lives here at this point, Matt Hunter.
Hi, guys. You can find me, obviously, here most of the time as well, Rockout Network, Sherdog.com. I am a photographer and videographer for them. And plus, Mixed Combat Radio, YouTube, mixedcombatradio.com, all podcast feeds. Find me there as well. Matt Hunter, MCR. You can find me, all social media platforms. Peace.
All right, Ben, where can everyone find you?
Houston.
You can also find him on Twitter at Benjamin Duffy. And the features drop down menu on Sherdog.com. All right, so all right, Jay, let the good folks know where they can find you as well.
Well, when you're looking for Ben Duffy, you can also find me on that same little features drop down. Just right in that list. I believe our social media personalities will be below, and if not, I'm pointing at nothing, and that's cool. And I'll be writing stats pieces about every event that basically happens in the sport of MMA. So I have 5 Fight Facts pieces coming out this week. I believe 1 or 2 are up. The rest of them will be coming as they are published because our publication schedule is loaded because of how many fights there were this weekend. Play-by-play, betting odds. I'm in the fight game. I'm everywhere you need me to be. So I'll see you there.
All right. And of course, I'm Ant Walker. You can follow me on Twitter at Ant Walker MMA. Obviously, you're already watching the Walkout Network, so you need to like, you need to subscribe, you need to share it, you need to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell 10 more friends. So the good, bad, and the ugly will be dropping for UFC Boston. That probably be coming out Saturday since the card is on Friday. Ask Ant, the mailback column, and Mr. Hunter will be joining me on the trenches for the Sherdog.com YouTube channel Wednesday evening at, was it 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern? I believe that's it. Yep. So, yeah, and there also will be a walk of shame after UFC Boston. So go ahead and tune back to this channel, the Walkout Network. In fact, just turn those notifications on so you know when your boy's about to go live. Now, you know what you got to do. You got to stay beautiful. You got to stay positive. You got to stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.